She looked at her small room, at the blanket still on the floor, at the tiny claw marks the cubs had left on her desk when they first came in. Snooze traveled fast on Station Orith 7. By the time Una finished breakfast that morning, everyone knew her name. She walked through the hallways to her first class, and students stopped to stare at her. Some whispered to each other. Some pointed. Some just watched with wide eyes as she passed. Una kept her head down and tried to ignore them. She did not like being the center of attention. She just wanted to go to class and learn, like a normal student. But normal was no longer possible. When she reached her classroom, her teacher, a tall alien with green scales and gentle eyes, stopped the lesson to acknowledge her. "Class, we have a celebrity among us today. Miss Una, the human who turned a predator den into a daycare." The other students laughed. Not in a mean way. In an impressed way. They looked at Una with new respect. "That's not what happened," Una said, her face turning red. "I just helped some lost cubs." Anyone would have done the same. "No," said a student in the front row. He was a small creature with big ears and a long tail. "No, they would not. Most of us would have hidden, or screamed, or been eaten. You did something different, something rare." Una did not know what to say. She sat down at her desk and hoped the attention would fade. But it did not fade. It grew dark by lunch. The story had spread across the entire station. The human who had calmed 3 Velkari cubs. The human who had been marked as a dominant predator by the security system. The human who had made the most feared species in the galaxy bow to her. Una ate her lunch alone in a corner of the dining hall. Or at least she tried to. One by one, students came to talk to her. They wanted to hear the story from her own mouth. They wanted to know how she had done it. They wanted to understand. She told the story again and again. Each time, the students looked at her with the same expression: wonder, curiosity, and something else. Something that took her a while to name. Hope. For years, humans had been seen as weak and unimportant. A young species with no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. They were tolerated in the galactic community, but not respected, not feared, not admired. But now, the other species were seeing something new. They were seeing that strength came in many forms. That power was not just about muscles and teeth. That sometimes, the bravest thing was not to fight, but to care. After lunch, Una had a break between classes. She walked to a quiet garden on the upper level of the station, hoping to find some peace. Instead, she found Instructor Barham waiting for her. "I heard what happened," he said. His gray face was serious, but his eyes were kind. "The whole station heard what happened." "I know," Una said with a sigh. "I can't go anywhere without people staring at me." Barham sat down on a bench and motioned for her to join him. "Get used to it, young human. You did something remarkable. Something that will be talked about for a long time." Una sat down next to him. The garden was beautiful. Plants from 100 different worlds grew here, filling the air with strange and wonderful smells. Through the glass ceiling, she could see the stars. "I didn't mean to become famous," she said. I heard them crying. The cubs, they were so scared. I couldn't leave them out there." Barham nodded slowly. "That is what makes humans special, I think. You feel the pain of others as if it were your own. You cannot ignore suffering, even when ignoring it would be safer. Is that special?" Una asked. "Isn't everyone like that?" Barham was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "No, not everyone. Many species in the galaxy have lost that ability. We became too focused on survival, too focused on strength. We forgot that there are other ways to live." He turned to look at her. "Your species is young. You have not had time to forget. You still remember how to be kind. how to love things that are different from you, how to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Una thought about this. She thought about Earth, about all the wars and cruelty that humans had caused, about all the terrible things they had done to each other. Were they really as kind as Barim said? But she also thought about the good things, about families who adopted children from other countries, about strangers who jumped into rivers to save people they had never met, about firefighters running into burning buildings, about doctors working for free in poor countries, about people who spent their lives helping animals and protecting nature. Maybe humans were both. Maybe they could be cruel and kind, selfish and generous, weak and strong. Maybe that was what made them interesting. I got a message this morning, Barim said, breaking into her thoughts. Your transfer request has been denied. Una looked at him in surprise. Denied? But you said you would help me move to a different block. Barim smiled. It was a real smile this time. The Volcari community made a formal request. They want you to stay in Block 7. They say you have earned your place among them. They say you are one of them now. Una did not know what to say. The Volcari wanted her? The Predators wanted her? There's more, Barim continued. The parents of the cubs you saved are important figures in Volcari society. They have offered to be your official protectors during your time at the academy. Anyone who threatens you will answer to them. But I don't need protectors, Una said. I'm fine on my own. I know you are. But this is their way of showing gratitude. Among Volcari, protecting someone's children is the highest honor. You have earned their respect, Una. Take it. It is a gift. Una looked out at the stars. She thought about how scared she had been on her first night in Block 7, how she had hidden under her blanket, afraid of the monsters outside her door. Now those monsters wanted to be her friends. The galaxy was strange. But maybe strange was not so bad. Over the next few weeks, Una's life changed. The whispers continued, but they were different now. Students did not look at her with curiosity anymore. They looked at her with respect. Some even looked at her with fear. The human who controlled predators. That was what they called her. The human who was not prey. Una did not like the title. It made her sound like some kind of warrior or ruler. But she understood why people used it. In a galaxy where strength was everything, she had shown a new kind of strength. And the galaxy did not know how to process it. One day, about a month after the storm, Una was walking back to her dorm when she heard a familiar sound. High-pitched voices. Happy voices? The sound of children playing. She turned a corner and found the 3 cubs from that night. They were bigger now, their fur thicker, their claws longer. But they still had the same bright eyes, the same playful energy. When they saw Una, they ran to her. They jumped around her legs and made happy sounds. The smallest one tried to climb up her back. The middle one licked her hand. The biggest one pressed its head against her stomach and purred. Una laughed. She knelt down and hugged all 3 of them. I missed you too, she said. A shadow fell over them. Una looked up and saw one of the adult Volcari standing nearby. It was the one who had bowed to her that morning after the storm. They talk about you all the time, the Volcari said. Its voice was warm with amusement. The human who sang to them. The human who kept them safe. You are their hero. They're sweet, Una said. She scratched behind the biggest cub's ear, and it made a sound of pure happiness. I think about them a lot too. The Volcari tilted its great head. You are a strange creature, human. You have no claws, no fangs, no armor. By all logic, you should be afraid of us. Yet, you show no fear. You treat us as equals, as friends. Una thought about this. On Earth, we have animals called dogs. They have sharp teeth and strong jaws. They could hurt us if they wanted to. But instead, we made friends with them. We took care of them. We loved them. And they loved us back. The Volcari listened with interest. I guess, Yuna continued, humans just like making friends. Even with things that could hurt us. Maybe especially with things that could hurt us. Because if something scary becomes your friend, then it's not scary anymore. It's just... A friend of Volcari was quiet for a long moment. Then it made that laughing sound that Yuna had heard before. Your species is going to change everything, it said. The galaxy has never seen anything like you. Is that good or bad? Yuna asked. The Volcari showed its teeth in a wide smile. I think it is very, very good. The cubs continued to play around Yuna's feet. The stars continued to shine through the station's windows. And somewhere, in the hearts of 1,000,000 different species across 1,000 different worlds, a new idea was taking root. The humans had arrived. And they were not prey. They were something else entirely. Something new. Something wonderful. They were friends, and the galaxy would never be the same. Yuna stood up and said goodbye to the cubs and their parent. She walked back to her dorm with a smile on her face. She thought about her mother and father back on Earth. She thought about all the humans who would come after her to this station, to this academy, to this galaxy. They would face challenges. They would face doubts. They would face species who saw them as weak and unimportant. But they would also have something powerful on their side. Something that could not be measured in claws or fangs or strength. They would have kindness. They would have compassion. They would have the ability to turn enemies into friends and strangers into family. That was the human gift. And it was more powerful than any weapon. Yuna Ope. The footsteps grew louder. Many footsteps. Heavy ones. They stopped right outside Yuna's door. There was a moment of silence. Then a voice. Deep and rough and full of authority. This is station security. Open the door. Now. Yuna did not panic. She had been expecting this. The storm was over. The lockdown was lifted. Of course, security would come to check on things. But she knew how this must look. A human alone with 3 Volcari cubs. In the eyes of the galaxy, she was either a victim or a criminal. She looked down at the cubs. They were awake now, their ears pointing toward the door. They could hear the voices too. They could smell the strangers. And they were scared again. It's okay, Yuna whispered to them. I won't let anything bad happen. I promise. She stood up slowly. The cubs watched her with worried eyes. The smallest one made a soft, whimpering sound. It did not want her to leave. I'll be right here, Yuna said. Don't worry. She walked to the door and pushed the desk aside. She took a deep breath. Then she opened the door. 4 security officers stood in the hallway. They were tall aliens with gray skin and armor that covered their bodies. They had weapons in their hands, pointed at the floor, but ready to be raised. Behind them, she could see other figures. More officers. Medical staff. And something else. Something big. 2 adult Volcari stood at the back of the group. They were huge. Bigger than any creature Yuna had ever seen. Their fur was dark and thick. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. Their claws were long and curved, built to tear through anything, and they were looking at Yuna with an expression she could not read. The lead security officer stepped forward. His weapon came up slightly. Are you hurt? He asked. No, Yuna said. I'm fine. Where are the Volcari cubs? Our sensors showed 3 predator signatures in your room during the storm. They're inside. They're safe. The officer looked past her, trying to see into the room. Step aside, human. We need to recover the cubs. Yuna did not move. They're scared. If you go in there with weapons, they might panic. Please, Let me bring them out." The officer frowned. He looked at his team. He looked at the Valkyrie parents in the back. One of them, the larger one, made a low growling sound. A sound of impatience. A sound of worry. "Fine," the officer said. "But be quick." Yuna nodded. She turned and walked back into her room. The cubs were huddled together on the blanket, their eyes wide with fear. When they saw her, they relaxed a little. But only a little. "Hey, little ones," Yuna said softly. She knelt down in front of them. "Your parents are here. They came to take you home." The cubs perked up. Their ears stood straight. They could smell something now. Something familiar. Something safe. Yuna held out her hands. "Come on. Let's go see them." The smallest cub came to her first, as always. It pressed against her leg, looking for comfort. The other two followed close behind. Together, they walked to the door. The security officers tensed when they saw the cubs. 3 young predators, walking calmly beside a human. It was not something they had ever seen before. It was not something they thought was possible. But the cubs were not paying attention to them. Their eyes were fixed on the 2 large figures in the back. Their parents. Their family. One of the adult Valkyrie pushed past the officers. It did not care about protocol. It did not care about weapons. It only cared about its children. The cubs ran to meet it. They made happy sounds, high-pitched and excited, as they jumped up against their parents' legs. The adult Valkyrie bent down and gathered all 3 cubs in its arms. It held them tight. It made a deep rumbling sound that Yuna recognized. A purr. A sound of relief and love. The second adult Valkyrie came forward too. It looked at its family for a long moment. Then it looked at Yuna. Yuna stood still. She did not know what to do. What did you say to a predator whose children you had spent the night protecting? Was there a protocol for this? The Valkyrie walked toward her. It was so big that it blocked the light from the hallway. Its shadow fell over Yuna like a blanket. Its eyes, golden and bright, stared into hers. Then it did something that made every security officer gasp. It bowed. The great predator, one of the most deadly species in the galaxy, lowered its head to a small human girl. It was a sign of respect, a sign of gratitude, a sign that meant more than words ever could. "You protected our children," the Valkyrie said. Its voice was deep and rough, but there was warmth in it. "You kept them safe when we could not. This debt cannot be repaid." Yuna did not know what to say. Her throat felt tight. Her eyes felt wet. I just did what anyone would do," she managed. The Valkyrie made a sound that might have been a laugh. "No, young human. You did what no one else would do. You saw our children, our predator children, and you did not run. You did not hide. You opened your door and gave them shelter. You sang to them. You held them. You loved them." The second Valkyrie came forward with the cubs still in its arms. The smallest one reached out toward Yuna. It wanted to go back to her. It wanted to stay with the kind human who had made the scary night less scary. Yuna reached out and touched the cub's head one last time. "Be good," she whispered. "Listen to your parents." The cub made a sad sound, but it stayed with its family. It understood, even if it did not like it. The lead security officer stepped forward. His face was pale. He looked like someone who had just seen a ghost. "I don't understand," he said. "Our sensors showed predator activity in your room all night. They showed 3 Valkyrie signatures. But they also showed calm, no fear, no aggression. The system even flagged your room as a secured zone." "What does that mean?" Yuna asked. "A secured zone it's a predator thing. It means a space is controlled by a dominant apex predator. It means the area is safe, because nothing would dare challenge the creature inside. The officer looked at her with new eyes. The system thought you were the dominant predator. There was silence in the hallway. Everyone stared at Yuna, the officers, the medical staff, the Valkyrie. Even the cubs peeked out from their parents' arms to look at her. Yuna felt her face turn red. That's ridiculous. I'm not a predator. I'm just a human. The first Valkyrie made that laughing sound again. Just a human, she says. A human who calmed 3 frightened cubs with nothing but her voice. A human who showed no fear in front of predators. A human who made my children feel safe when the universe was falling apart around them. It shook its great head. There is no just about you, young one. The second Valkyrie nodded. Among our people, there are stories. Old stories. They speak of a time before the Valkyrie were predators. A time when we were prey, hunted by creatures bigger and stronger than us. We survived because we learned to be fierce. We learned to be deadly. We became the hunters instead of the hunted. It paused and looked at Yuna with something like wonder in its eyes. But there's another way to survive. A way we had forgotten. Your kind remembers it. You survive not by being the strongest or the fastest. You survive by being kind, by caring for others, by building bonds that make you stronger together than you could ever be alone. The words hung in the air. Yuna did not know how to respond. She had never thought about it that way before. She had just done what felt right. The lead security officer cleared his throat. Well, this is going to be an interesting report to write. He lowered his weapon completely. The other officers did the same. Miss Yuna, you're not in any trouble. In fact, I think you might be some kind of hero. I'm not a hero, Yuna said quickly. I couldn't leave them out there. They were scared. They needed help. And that, the first Valkyrie said, is exactly what makes you special. The cubs made happy sounds. They seemed to agree with their parent. The medical team wanted to check on Yuna, make sure she was not hurt. She let them scan her with their devices and ask her questions about the night. She told them everything. About the scratching at the door. About the cubs coming in. About the song she sang and the warmth she shared. When she was done, the medical officer shook his head in amazement. Your stress hormones should be through the roof. A night with 3 predator cubs during a storm with no protection. But your levels are almost normal. How is that possible? Yuna shrugged. I don't know. I guess I was too tired to be scared. But that was not the whole truth. The truth was that she had been scared. Very scared. But she had not let the fear control her. She had pushed it down and focused on what mattered. On keeping the cubs safe. On being calm. On being kind. That was what humans did. They felt fear like everyone else. But they acted despite the fear. They moved forward even when their hearts were pounding. They faced the darkness even when their hands were shaking. Because sometimes the bravest thing you could do was not fight. The bravest thing was to open your door to something scary and say, come in. You're safe here. As the crowd began to leave, the first Valkyrie turned back to Yuna one last time. You are always welcome among our people, young human. If you ever need anything at all, you have only to ask. The Valkyrie do not forget those who protect our children. Yuna bowed her head. Thank you. I hope your little ones feel better soon. The Valkyrie smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth that somehow did not look scary anymore. They will. Thanks to you. Then they were gone. The officers left. The medical team left. The hallway grew quiet. Yuna stood alone in her doorway. The storm grew worse as the night went on. The station groaned like a living thing in pain. The walls shook. The floor vibrated. Every few minutes, the emergency lights flickered on and off, painting the room in red before drowning it in darkness again. Una stayed awake. She sat with her back against the wall, watching the 3 cubs sleep on the blanket. They looked peaceful now, but she could see their ears twitch every time the station made a loud noise. Even in sleep, they were afraid. Around midnight, the smallest cub woke up. It lifted its head and looked around the room with wide, scared eyes. When it could not see its mother, it started to whimper. The sound was high and sad, like a broken song. The other 2 cubs woke up next. They sat up and looked around. They did not know this place. They did not know this human. And their parents were not here. One of them, the biggest of the 3, stood up and growled at Una. It was still a small sound. Still more cute than scary. But there was real fear behind it. Real warning. Stay away from my siblings. Una did not move. She did not flinch. She just looked at the cub with calm eyes. Hey, she said softly. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. The cub growled again. It showed its teeth. They were small but sharp. Designed to tear meat from bone. Designed to kill. But Una was not afraid. Or rather, she was afraid, but she did not let it show. She had learned something during her first few days in the Valkyrie district. Predators could smell fear. They could feel it in the air. If she showed fear, the cubs might attack. It was in their nature. They could not help it. So she did not show fear. She showed calm. She showed warmth. She showed something the cubs had never seen from a creature that looked like her. She showed peace. Slowly, very slowly, Una started to hum. It was a song her mother used to sing to her when she was small. A lullaby about the moon and the stars and the dreams that came when children closed their eyes. The words were in Korean, but she did not sing the words. She just hummed the tune. The cubs froze. Their ears stood up straight. They had never heard music before. Not like this. The sounds of Valkyrie were deep and harsh, full of growls and barks and howls. This was different. This was soft. This was gentle. This was like water flowing over smooth stones. The biggest cub stopped growling. Its teeth slowly disappeared behind its lips. Its body, which had been tense and ready to fight, began to relax. Una kept humming. She moved her hands slowly so the cubs could see what she was doing. She reached for a small lamp on her desk and turned it on. It gave off a soft, warm light. Not too bright. Just enough to see. The cubs blinked in the light. Their eyes adjusted. They could see Una clearly now. They could see her soft skin and her gentle face. They could see that she had no claws, no fangs, no weapons of any kind. She was small and weak by their standards. But she was not afraid, and that confused them. On their homeworld, weak creatures ran. Weak creatures hid. Weak creatures were eaten. That was the law of nature. The strong survived. The weak did not. But this creature was not running. She was not hiding. She was sitting in front of 3 predators and humming a soft song. She was looking at them with kind eyes. She was offering them warmth when they expected coldness. The smallest cub moved first. It walked across the blanket toward Una. Its paws made no sound. Its eyes never left her face. When it reached her, it sniffed her hand. Once, twice. Then it pressed its head against her palm. Una's heart melted. She stroked the cub's fur gently. It was so soft, so warm. The cub made a sound she had not heard before. A low rumbling in its chest. Almost like a purr. There you go, Una whispered. See? I'm not so scary. The other 2 cubs watched their sibling. They saw the human petting it. They saw the cub relaxing under her touch. They saw something that went against everything they knew about prey and predator. They saw kindness. The middle cub came next. It was more careful than the smallest one. It walked in a wide circle around Yuna, sniffing the air, looking for danger. When it found none, it came closer. It sat down next to its sibling and let Yuna pet its head too. The biggest cub was the last to move. It was the most cautious, the most protective, but even it could not resist the warmth that Yuna offered. It came to her slowly, step by step, until it was close enough to touch. Yuna reached out and scratched behind its ear. The cub's eyes closed. Its body relaxed. The low rumbling sound filled the room now, coming from all three cubs at once. "You're not so scary either," Yuna said with a small smile. "Just big babies, aren't you?" The cubs did not understand her words, but they understood her tone. They understood her touch. They understood that this strange, soft creature meant them no harm. Yun pulled the blanket around all three cubs. They curled up against her, one on each side and one in her lap. Their fur was warm against her skin. Their heartbeats were fast but steady. Their breath was hot on her arms. She kept humming. The song changed from the lullaby to another one she knew. A song about home, about family, about the people we love and the places we miss. The cubs listened with half-closed eyes. Their ears moved slightly with each note. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the room, there was peace. 3 predator cubs and 1 human girl, sharing warmth in the darkness. It was strange. It was impossible. But it was happening. Yun looked down at the cubs in her arms. She thought about what Instructor Barim had told her, about how humans were seen as prey, about how the galaxy looked down on them, about how they were considered weak and fragile and not worth much. But Barim was wrong. The galaxy was wrong. Humans were not weak because they lacked claws. They were not fragile because they had soft skin. They were strong in ways that predators could never understand. Humans had something special, something rare, something that most species in the galaxy had lost long ago. They had compassion. They had the ability to look at a scared child, even a child with fangs and claws, and want to help. They had the instinct to protect the weak, even when the weak was stronger than them. They had the heart to love things that could hurt them. And that was not weakness. That was strength. Yuna did not know it yet, but she was doing something remarkable. The station's security system was always watching. Tiny cameras and sensors covered every room, every hallway, every corner. They measured heat and sound and movement. They looked for signs of danger, signs of violence, signs of fear. Right now, those sensors were very confused. The system had detected 3 Valkyrie life forms in Yuna's room. 3 young predators with claws and teeth. It had expected to find a fight. It had expected to find blood. It had expected to find the human dead or dying. Instead, it found calm. The stress levels in the room were low. The heart rates were steady. There was no fear. There was no aggression. There was only warmth and peace and the soft sound of humming. The system did not know what to do with this information. It ran through its protocols. It checked its rules. And then it did something it had never done before. It flagged Yuna's room as a secured zone. A secured zone was a special classification. It was usually given to spaces controlled by apex predators. Places where the strongest of the strong had marked their territory. Places that were safe, because nothing dared to enter. The system had looked at Yuna's room and decided that she was the dominant creature. She had 3 predators calm and content under her control. She had no weapons, no defenses, no advantages of any kind. And yet she was in charge. The system could not understand how, but it could see the results. And results were what mattered. Somewhere on the station, an alert appeared on a security officer's screen. A new secured zone had been registered in Block 7. The officer frowned and checked the details. A human room. A human student. That did not make sense, but before the officer could investigate, another alarm went off. The storm was causing problems all over the station. Fires and floods and broken doors. The strange alert could wait Dot back in her room. Yuna knew nothing about any of this. She just sat with the cubs in her arms, humming her songs, waiting for morning. The cubs slept deeply now, their bad dreams chased away by the warmth of her body and the softness of her voice. She was tired. So tired, but she did not want to sleep. She did not want to leave the cubs alone. They needed her. They trusted her. And she would not let them down. The hours passed slowly. The storm grew quieter. The station stopped shaking. The emergency lights stopped flickering. One by one, the normal lights came back on. The artificial sun began to rise outside the window. Morning had come. They had survived the night. Yuna looked down at the sleeping cubs and smiled. "Good job," she whispered. "You were very brave." The cubs did not answer. They just kept sleeping, safe and warm, curled up against the human who had shown them kindness when they needed it most. And Yuna kept watching over them, like a mother watching over her children, until the sound of footsteps in the hallway told her that the outside world was coming to find them. She took a deep breath and prepared herself for what came next. The story was about to get interesting. 3 days passed. Yuna learned the rhythm of life in the Volcari district. She woke up early, before the predators stirred. She ate her meals quickly in the common area and returned to her room before the hallways got crowded. She attended her classes on the other side of the station, where the buildings were bright and the students were friendly. Her classmates were curious about her. Humans were still rare in the galaxy. Many had never seen one before. They asked her questions about Earth, about oceans and trees and animals called dogs that humans kept as friends. Yuna answered them all with patience. She liked making friends. It made her feel less alone. But every evening, she had to return to Block 7, to the dark hallways, to the heavy air, to the sounds of predators behind every door. Instructor Burham visited her each day. He brought her news about her transfer request. Each day, the news was the same. Still waiting. Still processing. Maybe tomorrow. On the fourth night, something changed. Yuna was in her room, reading a book on her tablet. The station's artificial sun had set an hour ago. Outside her window, she could see the stars. Millions of them. Billions of them. Each one a sun with planets of its own. She wondered if any of them had humans too. A loud alarm suddenly filled the air. Red lights flashed on the ceiling. Yuna jumped up from her bed. Her heart pounded in her chest. A voice spoke over the station's communication system. It was calm but firm. "Attention all residents. This is a Level 3 emergency. A solar storm is approaching the station. All outer sections will experience power failures. Please remain in your current location. Do not attempt to travel. Repeat, do not attempt to travel. Lockdown will begin in 10 minutes." Yuna's blood went cold. Outer sections. That meant Block 7. That meant her. She looked at her door. It was electric. If the power went out, would the lock still work? Would she be safe? She grabbed her tablet and searched for information about solar storms. The results were not good. Level 3 storms could last for hours, sometimes days. The power would come and go. The communication systems would fail. The automatic doors would open and close on their own. And she was surrounded by predators. Yuna moved fast. She pushed her desk harder against the door. She piled her bags on top of it. She grabbed a metal bar from her closet, something she had found on her first day and kept just in case. It was not much, but it made her feel a little better. The lights flickered. Once, twice. Then they went out. Darkness. Complete darkness. Yuna could not see her hand in front of her face. She sat on her bed and held the metal bar tight. Her breathing was loud in the silence. Then the sound started. First, she heard doors opening. The hiss of metal sliding against metal. Then footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Running footsteps. And voices. Deep, growling voices calling out names she did not understand. Something banged against her door. Yuna bit her lip to stop herself from screaming. The bang came again. Harder this time. Then it stopped. Whatever was outside moved on. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Yuna could not tell. Time moved strangely in the dark. Then she heard something else. Something small. Something soft. A scratching at her door. Not hard like before. Gentle. Almost like a knock. Yuna stayed still. She did not move. She did not breathe. The scratching came again. And then a sound. A high-pitched sound. A whimper. Like a baby crying. Yuna's heart broke a little. She knew that sound. She had heard it before, back on Earth. It was the sound of something small and scared. She stood up slowly. She walked to the door. Her hands were shaking. "Hello?" She whispered. The scratching stopped. The whimpering got louder. Yuna pressed her ear against the door. She could hear breathing. Fast breathing. Scared breathing. More than one. Maybe two. Maybe three. She made a decision. It was probably stupid. It was probably dangerous. But she could not leave something scared and crying outside her door. She moved the bags and the desk. She took a deep breath. She opened the door. 3 pairs of eyes looked up at her. They glowed in the dark. Yellow and golden bright. They belonged to 3 small creatures. They were covered in dark fur. They had pointed ears and long tails. Their claws were already sharp, even though they were young. Their teeth were already pointed, even though they were small. Valkyrie cubs. 3 of them. Lost and alone and terrified. For a moment, nobody moved. The cubs stared at Yuna. Yuna stared at the cubs. The air was thick with tension. Then one of the cubs growled. It was trying to be scary, but its voice was too small, too high. It sounded more like a kitten than a predator. Yuna did something unexpected. She laughed. A soft, gentle laugh. Not mean. Just surprised. The cubs tilted their heads. They had never heard that sound before. It confused them. "Hey there," Yuna said. Her voice was soft, warm. "Are you lost?" The cubs looked at each other. They did not understand her words, but they understood her tone. She was not angry. She was not scared. She was kind. One of the cubs, the smallest one, took a step forward. It sniffed the air. It sniffed Yuna. Its nose twitched. "It's okay," Yuna said. She knelt down slowly. Very slowly. She did not want to scare them. "I won't hurt you." The small cub took another step. Then another. It was so close now that Yuna could feel its breath on her hand. Warm breath. Fast breath. She reached out slowly and touched the cub's head. Its fur was soft. Softer than she expected. The cub flinched at first, but then it leaned into her touch. Its eyes half closed. The other 2 cubs watched. They saw their sibling calm down. They saw the human was not dangerous. Slowly, carefully, they came closer too. Yuna smiled. "Come on," she said. "Let's get inside. It's not safe out here." She stood up and stepped back into her room. The cubs followed. One by one, they padded through her door on silent paws. Yuna closed the door behind them and pushed the desk back in place. She looked at the 3 cubs now sitting in the middle of her room. They looked at her. The situation was strange. A human alone with 3 predator children. In any other case, this would be a disaster. But right now, in the dark, during the storm, they were all just scared creatures looking for safety. "Okay," Yuna said. "I have no idea what you eat, but I have some snacks, and I have a warm blanket. Will that work?" The cubs did not answer. They just stared. Yuna pulled out a blanket from her bed. She spread it on the floor. She sat down on one end. The cubs watched her every move. Their eyes never left her. She patted the blanket. "Come on, it's soft. You'll like it." The smallest cub moved first. It walked over and sniffed the blanket. Then it lay down on it. Its tail curled around its body. The other 2 followed. Soon, all 3 cubs were lying on the blanket, their bodies close together. Yuna sat near them. Not too close. She did not want to make them uncomfortable, but close enough to watch over them. Outside, the storm raged on. The station shook. The lights flickered. Strange sounds echoed through the halls. But inside Yuna's small room, there was peace. The cubs fell asleep first. Their breathing slowed. Their bodies relaxed. One of them, the middle one, kicked its leg like a dog dreaming of running. Yuna smiled. She had never seen a Valkyrie before, except in pictures. The pictures made them look scary, dangerous, deadly. But these cubs looked like puppies. Big puppies with sharp teeth, but puppies still. She wondered where their parents were. Somewhere on the station, probably trapped by the lockdown. Probably scared. Probably worried sick about their children. Yuna made a silent promise. She would keep these cubs safe until the storm passed. She would protect them. No matter what. It was a strange thing to promise. She was supposed to be the prey. They were supposed to be the predators. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, they were just children who needed help. And Yuna had never been able to say no to children. She leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. The cubs breathed softly beside her. The storm howled outside. But inside her heart, there was calm. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know how the galaxy would see her after this. But she knew one thing for sure. Tonight, she was not prey. Tonight, she was a protector. And that felt right. The shuttle shook as it passed through the docking rings of Station Aura 7. Yuna held tight to her seat and looked out the small window. The station was huge. It was bigger than any city she had ever seen on Earth. Lights blinked everywhere. Ships moved in and out like tiny insects around a giant metal flower. She was 22 years old. She had dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were wide with wonder and a little bit of fear. This was her first time leaving Earth. This was her first time meeting aliens. And now, she was going to study at the most famous academy in the known galaxy. The Galactic Academy accepted students from over 300 different species. Humans had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. Earth was still considered a baby planet. Most aliens thought humans were weak, soft, and not very smart. Yuna wanted to prove them wrong. The shuttle landed with a soft bump. The door opened, and Yuna stepped out into a wide hallway filled with strange sounds and stranger smells. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked past her. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Yuna tried not to stare, but it was hard. She followed the signs to the registration office. Her bags floated behind her on a small hover cart. The academy had sent her instructions before she left Earth. She had read them 100 times. But nothing could prepare her for actually being here. The registration office was a round room with tall ceilings. A creature with blue skin and 4 arms sat behind a desk. It looked at Yuna with 2 of its 3 eyes. "Name?" it asked. Its voice was deep and smooth. Yuna, Park Yuna, I am from Earth. The creature typed something on a floating screen. Ah, yes. The human exchange student. You are assigned to dormitory block 7, section 12. Yuna nodded and took the small card the creature handed her. The card had her photo and a map of the station. She thanked the creature and walked away. She did not notice the way it watched her leave. She did not see the worry in its eyes. Dormitory block 7 was on the outer ring of the station. Yuna walked for a long time. The hallways changed as she moved. Near the center, everything was bright and clean. But as she got closer to block 7, the lights became dimmer. The walls became rougher. The air felt different too. Heavier, warmer. She passed fewer students. The ones she did see were bigger than the others. They had sharp teeth and long claws. Their eyes followed her as she walked. Yuna kept her head down and moved faster. She found her room at the end of a long corridor. The door was thick and metal. It had scratch marks on it. Deep ones. Yuna swallowed hard and pressed her card against the lock. The door slid open. The room inside was small but clean. There was a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out into space. Yuna put her bags down and sat on the bed. She let out a long breath. Okay, she said to herself. You can do this. A chime sounded from the door. Yuna jumped. She walked over and opened it. Standing outside was a tall alien with gray skin and kind eyes. He wore a uniform that marked him as an instructor. Hello, he said. I am Instructor Barim. I am your advisor for this year. Yuna bowed slightly. Nice to meet you, Instructor. Barim smiled. At least, Yuna thought it was a smile. It was hard to tell with aliens. May I come in? He asked. Yuna stepped aside and let him enter. Barim looked around the room. His expression changed. The kindness in his eyes turned to worry. They put you here? He asked. Yes. Is something wrong? Barim sighed. He walked to the window and looked outside. This block is called the Velkari district. Do you know what Velkari are? Yuna shook her head. They are one of the oldest predator species in the galaxy. They are large. They are fast. They have claws that can cut through metal and teeth that can crush bone. On their home world, they are the top hunters. Nothing is above them in the food chain. Yuna felt her stomach drop. And they live here? In this block? Yes, the Academy puts all the predator species together. It is safer for the others that way. Barim turned to face her. Humans are not like Velkari. Your bodies are soft. You have no claws, no sharp teeth. In the eyes of the galaxy, you are prey. The word hit Yuna like a punch. Prey. She thought about all the aliens she had passed in the hallway. The ones with the sharp teeth. The ones who had watched her walk by. Why did they put me here? She asked. Her voice was small. I do not know, Barim said. There must have been a mistake. I will try to get you moved. But it may take time. The Academy is very busy at the start of the year. Yuna nodded. She tried to look brave. But inside she was scared. Very scared. Barim put a hand on her shoulder. His skin was cool and smooth. Listen to me carefully, young human. Do not go out at night. Do not make loud noises. Do not show fear. Predators can smell fear. It makes them hungry. Yuna swallowed again. I understand. Good. Barim walked to the door. I will check on you tomorrow. Lock your door and stay inside tonight. The welcome feast is happening, and many predators will be excited. It is not a good night to be alone in this block. He left. The door closed behind him with a heavy click. Yuna stood in the middle of her small room. She looked at the scratch marks on her door from the inside. They were deep. Something had tried very hard to get in once. She locked the door. Then she locked it again. Then she pushed her desk in front of it. Outside, she could hear sounds. Deep growls. Heavy footsteps. Something scratched against the wall of the hallway. Una turned off her lights and climbed into bed. She pulled the blanket over her head like she used to do when she was a little girl afraid of monsters. But these monsters were real. And they lived right next door. Yuna closed her eyes and tried to sleep. She thought about home. She thought about her mother and father back on Earth. She thought about the small apartment where she grew up. She thought about the sound of rain on the window and the smell of her mother's cooking. She had come here to prove that humans were not weak. She had come here to show the galaxy that Earth deserved respect. But right now, hiding under her blanket in a room surrounded by predators, she did not feel strong at all. She felt very, very small. The night passed slowly. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow made her heart beat faster. She did not sleep. She just waited. Waited for morning. Waited for safety. Waited for a chance to prove that she was more than just prey. Because deep down, Una knew something that the galaxy did not. Humans were survivors. They had faced ice ages and plagues and wars. They had climbed mountains and crossed oceans and reached for the stars. They were not fast. They were not strong. But they were stubborn. They never gave up, and neither would she. When the first light of the artificial dawn came through her window, Una finally closed her eyes. She had survived her first night in the Valkyrie district. It was a small victory, but it was hers. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tomorrow would bring new fears. But tomorrow, she would face them. One step at a time. One breath at a time. One heartbeat at a time. That was the human way.